Secondly, sir, more than 40,000 Palestinians have now been killed in Gaza, a majority of whom are civilians, and these numbers are from the Palestinian Ministry of Health, but they are backed up by the United States, by international organizations. Humanitarian conditions in Gaza have degraded so much that diseases like polio and hepatitis A are now spreading. We have seen countless children be orphaned. We have seen countless mothers lose their children. How much is too much, sir? At what point is it time to end this war?
Well, we'll end the war when we achieve our war goals of making sure that Hamas can't repeat such atrocities. But we're fighting this war in a just war with just means. In fact, with means that no other army has ever fought. No other army has taken the precautions that Israel has taken, sometimes at great risk, to make sure that we minimize the number of casualties. You talked about polio. We enabled now massive vaccination of polio. We want 90% of the Gazan people of Gaza vaccinated. I think 200,000 I think were vaccinated today. We've put in 1 million tons of food, 1 million tons of aid, 700,000 tons of food. That's unheard of. We've taken, because we think that every civilian death is a tragedy. For Hamas, every civilian death is a strategy. For us, it's a tragedy. So we've taken precautions to avoid civilian deaths that no army on earth, on urban warfare, has taken. We've issued millions of text messages, millions of flyers, hundreds of thousands of phone calls. We actually phone people and say, get out. We lose the element of surprise. So as a result of that, in the most densely packed urban warfare theater in history, where you have 35,000 Hamas terrorists, 50 meters above ground, 50 meters below ground, in the most intricate and complex underground terror tunnel network on earth, we've been able to achieve the lowest ratio of civilians to combatant deaths in the history of modern urban warfare. It's 1-to-1, even by those numbers of the Palestinian Health Ministry, because we've killed probably around 18,000 terrorists, certainly no less than 17,000. So the ratio is about 1-to-1. But recently, it's gone down precipitously. You know when? We went into Rafah. And you remember what the international community and the international press and many of you reported before that. You said they're going to be stuck there. There are 1.4 million people in Gaza. They moved from the north to the south. You're going to have thousands, 20,000 killed. You're going to have a catastrophe, a humanitarian catastrophe. They have no place to go, no food to eat. Now report honestly, because here's what happened. They all left. They went to the humanitarian zone, which is 2 miles away, less, on the beach. They have tents. We supplied tents for 150,000 people. The aid agencies supplied the rest, and some of them carried their own tents. They have a place. We supplied water lines, sewage lines, food. There's more to be done, medical. So now we know how many people were killed, how many terrorists, because we counted them. And we just passed 2,000. Terrorists, body counts of terrorists. The people left. How many civilians died? I asked the commander of the division that did the Rafah operation and the Philadelphia corridor. He said, Prime Minister, there are hardly any civilian deaths because everybody left. They heeded our warnings. But he said there were probably 24, and most of them occurred, 24, and most of them occurred when one of our bombs hit a Hamas ammunition depot that was planted inside a residential area. 40 people died, about 20 were terrorists, but 20 were civilians. And he said that's most of the deaths. That's the lowest ratio of non-combatants to combatants in the history of urban warfare. That's it. Now report honestly, because you accused us of something that is outrageous. And in fact, the accusations against us are outrageously false. Humanitarian aid? 1 million trucks of aid, 1 million tons of aid, 700,000 tons of food, a deliberate starvation policy. You can say anything. Doesn't make it true. You repeat a lie over and over and over again. It assumes the cachet of self-evident truth, but it's false. Israel is doing, and the Israeli army is doing, something that no other army has done in history and will continue to do that. I'm not going to change my policies. Humanitarian policies, vaccination policies, combat policies to minimize civilian casualties.
In BBC News. Mr. Prime Minister, Antony Blinken said he heard directly from you that you had endorsed a clear schedule and locations for the withdrawal of troops. Did you tell him that you would withdraw troops from the Philadelphia corridor at any point in a deal?
No, I said I think you're conflating here two things. Number one, I agreed to reduce the number of troops along the Philadelphia corridor, okay? Because we don't need a division and a half on this 8-mile corridor. We don't need that, okay? They can both protect themselves and prevent the smuggling of terrorists, of hostages outside, and keep the corridor intact and prevent its porous perforation. So we don't need that much. And I said we can reduce the number of troops, and we did. But I think the other thing they're asking is what happens in phase 2, okay? We are talking about phase 1, 42 days. We stay there, it's obvious. Again, in somewhat reduced presence because we don't need as large a force. But we also agree to begin discussions about a permanent ceasefire. And the conditions that we shall have for a permanent ceasefire must include a situation where the Philadelphia corridor cannot be perforated. Somebody has to be there. Somebody has to be there. Look, I don't care. Bring me anyone who will actually show us, not on paper, not in words, not in a slide, but on the ground, day after day, week after week, month after month, that they can actually prevent the recurrence of what happened there before. We're open to consider it. But I don't see that happening. And until that I don't see that happening right now. And until that happens, we're there. You wanted to ask another question, but go ahead.
CBS,
Yeah,
CBS please.
Okay.
CBS.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. I'm Elizabeth Palmer from CBS. President Biden said you were not doing enough to reach a hostage deal. How do you interpret that, and what's your response?
I think I've already answered that. I'm just talking about the facts, just the facts. I said that in April, we gave an extraordinarily generous offer, not my words, Secretary Blinken. On May 31st, we accepted the American proposal. Hamas refused. On August 16th, we accepted the second American proposal, the final bridging proposal. We accepted, Hamas again refused. On just last week, as I said, the deputy CIA director said that Israel has been serious about the negotiations, Hamas is not. So I've gone out of my way, I've given leeway to our negotiating teams 5 times. 5 times. And I have areas of flexibility. But where I have to be firm, I'm firm. Where I can be flexible, I'm flexible. But in fact, the obstacle has been Hamas from the beginning. Everybody knows that. Secretary Blinken said that. Others said that. We all know that. Should we do more? Well, we have a saying in Hebrew, Mivchan HaMetziut, I'll translate that, is the test of results, okay? The result is we've achieved the release of more than half the hostages and a lot more than half of the living hostages. But as far as I'm concerned, there's still a task to be done more. And yes, we'll do more because I'm committed to getting them out, all of them. And we'll get them out in the right combination of military pressure, negotiating pressure, and negotiating flexibility where we can be. That is the truth. So I would direct the pressure and the rage where it belongs on those who took these hostages, those who keep them in those dark dungeons, And those who massacre them in cold blood, it's Hamas, it's Sinwar.
Thank you. Bloomberg, Dan Williams.
Dan Williams from Bloomberg. Back in April, you said Israel was but a step away from victory. A month later, your national security advisor said the war would last into 2025. Now, a few months on, where do things stand? When will this war end? And a related question, please. A year ago, you were fitted with a pacemaker. I believe at times you were fitted with a halter to monitor the pacemaker. You said yesterday you sleep 2 hours a night. In your televised briefing, you get a couple hours
Did I
sleep.
say 2 hours on it? I'll correct that.
That may have been in jest. Nonetheless, you're under enormous stress. Given the course of the war, given it appears to be open-ended, given the march of time, do you believe you're in a position to sustain the management of this war?
Sorry, your first question was? I didn't
First question was about the timeline for the war, given that you said in April it was a step away, you were a step away from victory, and then a month later, your national security advisor said it would last into the coming year.
Thank you. What I said, or what I meant to say, was that we're a step away from the critical thing that will pave our way to victory. I didn't think that we could have this victory if we didn't go into Rafah. And I withstood quite a bit of international pressure and American pressure to go into Rafah and to Philadelphia. I thought there's no way we can end this war without it, for the reasons I explained. So we did it. I said this before we completed this task. And we did indeed complete this task, and now we're in a position to destroy Hamas militarily. There's still work to be done to destroy its governance capability. Primarily, I don't want to run Gaza, but I want to take away from Hamas the key thing that they have, other than the military, which we're destroying. You know, we're killing their certain senior commanders, we're killing their operators, we're destroying their tunnels, we're destroying their weapons manufacturing capability, we're stopping the cash. They don't have any cash. We found millions and millions of shekels in cash in these tunnels. They don't have any more cash. Part of the reason they're squeezed is because we control their money machine, which was the Rafah crossing. They don't have that. So we're choking them. But there's one thing that they have, which is the distribution of food. They basically, we let the trucks come in. We let all those trucks come in. And Hamas's strategy is to steal, hoard, and gouge. That's what they do. They take the food, they take exorbitant prices. They steal the food, charge exorbitant prices from Gaza, from the Gaza population, and that's how they continue to. They hope to continue to survive, and we have to take that away from them. Again, I don't want to run Gaza, I don't want to administer Gaza, but I want to take this away from them. So we still have to do that, but we're well ahead in our program for victory, which we'll achieve, than we were a few months ago. And when I said what I said, I was right. The second question you ask is, how long can you do this? As long as it takes to achieve this victory. And I think we're getting a lot closer. And as long as the people of Israel entrust it to me, that's all. As far as my health is concerned, it's fine.
Sky News.
Prime Minister asked from Sky News. I don't know whether we can see that wider map of Israel again, whether it's technically possible to get it back up on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, show it.
You said at the beginning, the slightly wide one. No, a bit wider. There we go. You said at the beginning of your speech that Hamas and others in the Middle East want to wipe Israel off the map. You have literally wiped the West Bank off that map. Is that official policy now, that the West Bank doesn't exist?
No, I didn't include the Dead Sea. It's not shown in the map. I didn't show the Jordan River. It's on this map. I didn't show the Sea of Galilee.
But those
it's on
are
that
geographical
map.
features. This is a population of
Well,
2
I
million
didn't
Palestinians who live there.
didn't get into that. I was talking about Gaza. There is a whole issue of what to do, how to achieve peace between us and the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. I didn't get into that. That's another press conference. I'll be happy to do it. To wipe out some of the misconceptions and the slanders and lies that are directed at us. We don't intend to drive these people away. They want to drive us away. It's a big difference. You know, every day they target us. You know what they teach in the schools, in the PA schools? They teach exactly the same thing that they teach, the same textbooks, as in same textbooks here in the PA schools as here. Same thing. Israel has to be destroyed, kill as many Jews, pay for slay, the more Jews, the more Israelis you killed, the more you get paid. There's a difference in strategy. You know, Hamas believes that the way to destroy Israel is through outright terror and military confrontation immediately, backed by Iran. It's all part of the Iranian axis. The Palestinian Authority believes that the way to do it is by ICC, by having lawfare, absurd charges leveled at Israel and its leaders, including me. Enormous pressure to drive Israel to indefensible boundaries, where the boundaries would be right here, right next to Tel Aviv, that's it. 8, 10 miles from the sea, and then push to the sea. There's a difference. But the goals are the same. No, I didn't show that, but if you want, Alistair, next press conference, I guarantee you can ask all the questions you want and I'll give you the answers, the truth, the facts that your readers and viewers do not get. In this horrible harangue of this one democracy fighting this just war with just means against the most horrendous savages on the planet. And Israel is being condemned. Israel is being pilloried. Israel is being slandered. This is something that not only affects the Jewish people. 80 years after the Holocaust, when our enemies are openly declaring that they'll make another Holocaust, it also affects a beleaguered democracy that is fighting the battle of all democracies against these barbarians. So yes, I'll be happy to talk about the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority, you name it. And in fact, I'll let you name it, because one thing I do not fear is tough questions. And I hope you accept some direct answers.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, Antonio Pita, El País newspaper. First time I came here as a correspondent, it was 2007. I was here for 7 years, then I came back right before the elections. I find it hard to recall a speech in which you mentioned Philadelphia corridor, at least gave it a lot of importance. Why suddenly in the last few weeks it seems that the future of Israel depends on that? Thanks.
Now, I hope that it's your own recollection and not something that you heard on the news or in our, in some of our reporting. Netanyahu has not mentioned the Philadelphia corridor. All right. So here's what I said. Okay, when I resigned from Sharon's government because I couldn't agree with the policy, and so I resigned. I was finance minister, and I said to him in the resignation letter, I said, at least, you should stay in the Philadelphia corridor, because otherwise this is going to become Hamastan, which it did. Okay, and I talked about it before that too. Okay, and then now you talk about this war, right? We had a lot of discussions in security meetings about the Philadelphia corridor, about the smuggling, and we had an option. What do we do? What do we do about it? Because the only way to deal with it really was to conquer Gaza. But we knew we didn't have neither the domestic legitimacy nor the international legitimacy to do it. Look how much problem we have now after this worst savagery that was delivered to the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and we still have. Look at all the questions you're asking me. Look at all the international pressure that is put on Israel. So certainly we didn't have that legitimacy before the October 7th massacre. And so what we did was basically attack Hamas every time, attack it again and again and again. I, as Prime Minister, led 4 of these operations in which we killed 6,000 of their terrorists. We killed their military chief, Jabri was called, and others. But we didn't go in. The only way we could deal with the Philadelphia corridor was to conquer Gaza. And the only way we could conquer Gaza was to have the legitimacy that we lacked until October 7th happened. Once it happened, we went into Gaza, and guess what? The first time I talked about the Philadelphia corridor, I called it the southern Sugar Drumi, the southern barrier. I said, we need a southern barrier, okay? And we discussed 2 possibilities, one the Philadelphia corridor and one, 1 or 2 kilometers north of that's not important, okay? But it was clear you have to stop. Can you show that map again of the perforation? Yeah, no, not that one. Not that one either. We have to stop this. If we don't stop this, we've achieved nothing. So I spoke about it publicly, First time in November. You know when the war began, October, right? But that's my first public statement. Now, you should check this out. My research team, just by punching out, found 8 references every month about the Southern Corridor. I can tell you that in our internal discussions, in the War Cabinet and in the General Cabinet, I talked about it a lot. So here again is a misrepresentation of fact. Oh, we're using this as a pretext. This is just a way, a political ploy. It's not a political ploy. You have to be blind not to see this. I'm not blind, nor are the people of Israel. They overwhelmingly support keeping this corridor in our hands because they understand that this is something that we must do both to achieve our goal of winning the war, but also to put the pressure to release our hostages, and we'll do so. But I can tell you, it's not the first time that I talked about it.
Patrick Kingsley, New York Times. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for this. Patrick Kingsley, New York Times. Thank you for this press briefing. If the Philadelphia corridor was so important to you, why did the Israeli army not head for it first when you invaded Gaza in late October? If it was so important to you, why was it not even mentioned in the May 27th proposal that Israel made to the negotiators? If the disengagement from Gaza was so important to you, why did you personally vote for it at that time, before leaving government? And finally, you mentioned Israel not intending to administer Gaza after the war. Does that mean you can unequivocally rule out settling Gaza with Israeli civilians?
I don't have my pen here, so if you can give me a pen, I'll write down all these questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I explained that it was important enough that we had it. It was clear we were going to conquer all of Gaza, that we didn't have a choice. But the sequencing, and I won't get into the military consideration, which the cabinet accepted in this case. We were uniform on that. We didn't know when we go in what exactly would happen. We knew there was a vortex, a main nerve center in Gaza City, around the Shifa Hospital and elsewhere. And this was the progression that was there, was supposed to continue with one fell swoop. We had a lot of obstacles to get down to Rafah in the Philadelphia corridor. Took us about 3 months, but the idea was to do it very fast, and we did it. Now, once we've done it, obviously we're going to keep it. You ask, why, if it was so important for you, did you vote for the disengagement? Number one, I voted in the capital, in the Knesset, for, I was finance minister. I wanted to do some important reforms that revolutionize the Israeli economy. You can see it in the skyline of Tel Aviv and Israel's other cities. Basically a free market reforms. And I was caught in a quandary because I wanted to complete those reforms, but I knew that once the government actually votes to tear out the communities and to get out, that's it. My reforms would be stymied. Israel would not have would not become the technological and economic powerhouse that it became. So the question was, and the government didn't quite do this. They were careful. The government in which I was a part, they basically said, okay, we haven't decided yet on whether we leave. What we're going to do is create the possibility by the Knesset bills that if we decide to leave, there will be compensation for those who leave. That was the vote, the famous vote that people show on television. So anyway, when the actual vote came in the cabinet to leave, I said, you have to stay in there. You cannot leave the Philadelphia corridor. And I resigned from the government. So I voted against it. That's important. You asked another question.
Why wasn't it even mentioned in the 27th of May proposal of the Philadelphia corridor? And secondly, can you rule out resettling Israeli civilians in Gaza after the war?
Well, the May 27th Israeli proposal, the May 27th American proposal, said that did not contradict in any way our going into the Rafah crossing. We talked with the Americans. We said in a number of conversations we have to deal with the the southern barrier. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to deal with it. But it doesn't contradict. There's no contradiction between that and the May 27th proposal. And we're quite clear about it. And I think the Americans know our position quite well. As far as resettling, I don't think it's a realistic goal. I said it. I said it in front of my cabinet. I haven't changed my view. And the people.
Thank you, thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Marie Finoshina, RT. Mr. Prime Minister, we've heard a lot today about Philadelphia corridor. I have one very specific question.
What do you represent, sorry?
RT, Russia Today television. Was the Israeli control over the Philadelphia corridor ever mentioned in any of the versions of the deal that Hamas accepted? And today, is it the only obstacle to the deal, the only disagreement between the sides, or there are other disagreements? Thank you very much.
Well, there's a premise in your question that is simply wrong. You say, was it mentioned in the deal that Hamas accepted? Hamas didn't accept the deal. On the May 27th proposal, they had 29 changes, corrections, 29, which effectively vitiated any of them from any meaning. It was a rejection. In fact, a detailed rejection of the deal. So while we accepted it as is, we didn't make any changes. And I didn't bring any new condition. Anything that contradicts anything that is said there, Hamas basically wiped the floor with it. I mean, they wouldn't accept it. They didn't accept that, and they didn't accept the bridging proposal. And Al-Khia, who is the deputy, Sinwar's deputy, said 2 days ago, so we remain steadfast. What do we want? No, they didn't accept it. No, they didn't. Again, you want the facts, okay? So the fact is, they rejected the May 20th. They said they accepted it, but they have 27 or 29 rather corrections. That's like I don't know, the German government saying we accept the American proposal, but we're going to stay in Berlin. We're going to control Germany. You're going to go out, and we can resupply ourselves. But we accepted your proposal. It doesn't mean anything. They put in 29 corrections that essentially was a sound and detailed rejection of the deal. I don't care, how they frame it for public purposes. It's meaningless. We know the truth. And again, they flatly rejected the bridging proposal. And yesterday, or 2 days ago, Al-Khia flatly rejected it again. And he says, what does he say? He basically says, Israel has to get out, everything, including the Philadelphia corridor, and we can rearm ourselves and do October 7th again and again and again. So it's not that they accepted it. You asked the second question, which is?
Is Philadelphia corridor and...
Oh, is it the only obstacle? No, it's not. In fact, everything. We have the Philadelphia corridor. We have the what's the ratio of hostages to civilians to terrorists who are released? Do we have a veto power over these terrorists because some of them committed the worst atrocities you can imagine? Should they come back to Judea, Samaria, or can we take them out of the country, and so on and so on and so on? I mean, the whole thing has not been resolved. Hamas has rejected everything. And we're trying to find some area to begin the negotiations. They refuse to do that. 2 days ago, he said, no, there's nothing to talk about. So I hope that changes, because I want those hostages out. I want those families, I want those mothers to see their loved ones. I don't want to see a repetition of what I saw in Ashkelon. These tortured souls. I want them to have happiness, just like the ones that we rescued, were able to rescue. We brought 117 people alive. And by the way, I insisted in the first deal, we talked about 50, and I said, no, we're going to get 30 more out. And I talked to President Biden, he helped, and I appreciate it. And we brought it up from 50 to 80. That's 80 souls that came back to life. Their families came back to life. So, look, I'll do everything I can to get these people out. But the pressure should be directed where it belongs. It's not on Israel. It's on Hamas. Thank you all. You've been very, very patient. Thank you.